everybody, what's up, what's up, what's up? Welcome back. Say hi in the chat. We got Nick in the house, Maddie, good to see you. DC says, where's KG at? I am right here, my friend, right here, ready to rock and roll. Jens, Jasper, Kristaps, welcome, welcome, welcome. As Kevin says, only legends like the video before it even starts. 100%, 100%. You already know it's going to be fire. So like, you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait and assess, you know, you can pre-like. Absolutely. You can pre-like. We got Manny in the house. Yep. See, they already know. They already know. We are going to be talking about Etch today. We've got, oh man, we've got a lot of OGs, I mean, Steve Baker's here. We got Tommy, we got Suzanne, this is really, Melanie's here. Derek, Curtis, Joe, Sylvia. It's a who's who of the OG clan. Tyree, 4 minutes late. I'm not 4 minutes late. I started 2 minutes. That's 2 minutes, 2 minutes late. 2 minutes late. Tyree, settle down. You'll be all right. Toby in the house. Welcome, welcome. All right. We got good numbers. Here's what we're going to do today. We are going to talk all things Etch. I've got a little, kind of list of stuff to go over. Some exciting things. We'll talk about the March 31st launch that's coming up. The second opportunity to get into Etch. I will do a bunch of Q&A. I think that one thing I find very interesting, obviously Etch is doing a lot of things very differently than you've probably seen them done before. And I really think there's a lot of interesting conversations that are going to happen and need to happen and should happen around that, of why things are done differently. What was wrong with the old way, and why are we approaching things differently? So there's a lot of philosophical aspects to talk about. And you might have your own questions regarding the philosophy of doing the work that we do, right? Making our workflow more efficient, scalable, maintainable, all the things that we always talk about. So if you have questions about those things, those are great discussion topics. So any questions on that stuff would be fantastic. Of course, if you have questions on things outside of that scope, you can ask those questions as well. Just make sure that you use hashtag Q. Gotta use hashtag Q so I can find your question. Finally, time to see you live. Oh, well, this is your first time. Scott, this can't be your first time, Scott. Oh, are you talking about maybe in Arizona? Is that what you're talking about? It might be. It might be. Okay, I don't know. Let's do this. Before we get into the Etch talk, I got one little update for you. This is for Inner Circle peeps. This is for people who saw this teased on a previous WDD live. Let me go ahead and share my screen. This lead magnet, which is a lead magnet for you to use as an agency or freelancer. It's called How to Hire a Web Design Agency and Not Get Burned. Essentially, when people come to your agency website, your freelance website, your web design business website, whatever, obviously you're trying to sell them on your services and all of that good stuff, but really they're in the mode. You have to understand that they are in the mode of choosing an agency, not just deciding whether they're going to go with you or not go with anybody. It's always you or these other people. And let's face it, they're not technical people most of the time. They don't really know how to navigate this stuff. They don't know how to navigate the conversations that they are going to have with these other agencies and freelancers. They can be told anything. Like, they're going to talk to you, then they're going to talk to 3 other people, let's say, and those 3 other people can tell them anything. I mean, they're going to tell them how great SEO is in 2025. They're going to tell them how awesome they can make their social media posts and channels, and they're going to tell them all this nonsense. And then they're going to go build a site with Divi or Elementor, and it's going to suck, and it's not going to be scalable. It's not going to be made. It's going to have all these problems. It's going to be another sad face scenario, and we want to save them from that. And so what we understand is that they're in the buying process. Now is the best possible time to say, hey, I know you're not super technical. I know you probably don't really know how to navigate this process or navigate these conversations. What I would like to do is I would like to help you. I would like to give you a free guide. You just read this over. It's a quick read, but this is going to equip you essentially to be impervious to the bullshit that you're going to encounter throughout this process. And really, you're going to feel confident going through this process. You're going to know what questions to ask. You're going to know how to answer the questions that you are asked. And it is a very, very valuable resource for them. So what they're going to do is they're going to give you their name and their email address and potentially their phone number. And then you're going to give them this asset. And they are going to quickly digest it because it's not super long. It's a quick read, it's a casual read, but it's also a very valuable read. It has been, it's dripping with copywriting goodness in a lot of ways. And what I actually did is I took extra time to go through because I wrote everything out in Notion, and Notion has this little comment feature, and you can go and you can comment on any line that you want to comment on. And I flooded the thing with comments about why we're saying this, and specifically in this way and at this time. And so it's also like, it happens to be for you, a little copywriting mini workshop kind of thing. But you are able to take this, you are able to deploy it as your own asset for your own lead capturing capabilities. What I would recommend you do is you create a CPT on your website, you create an archive post, you could create a post template, and then this way, and the reason we do this, I guess I should explain why I recommend doing it this way. One, it allows you to publish a lot of guides like this. You might have other ideas for guides that you want to publish, makes it really easy to publish additional guides, okay? That's number one. Number two, we have to talk about consuming freebies like this. You could make this a PDF. You could make it a downloadable PDF. 9 times out of 10, people are going to opt in for that PDF. They're going to download it. They are going to never open it. They are not going to do anything with it. 9 times out of 10. So you're just losing. Like, if they don't read the guide, it does you no good. By the way, the guide, like, it pre-sells them on working with you. It makes you the obvious choice. So among educating them in general, because you presumably do all these things the right way, it makes you the obvious choice among all the people that they're looking at. So they're pre-sold. By the time they get on the phone with you, they already want to work with you, okay? That's kind of the conclusion that they're going to be coming to as they read the guide. Getting them to read it is the critical step of the process. And we know that a lot of lead magnets they get downloaded, they never get read. So the reason that you're making it a post in an archive, and like they can go from post to post to post and read this thing, is because one, it's quick and easy. So they're going to want to read every chapter immediately. They're going to want to go right to the next one. And so we want to allow them to do that. If we gave them if we made this an email drip series, that's another option. If we did that, they would have to wait until the next day for the next email, for the next chapter. And then we're hoping that we keep their attention over the course of like a week, because there's like 7 chapters to this thing. Why do we want to take that risk? Why do we know people are busy. The emails might not get through. They might get lost in the inbox. Any number of things could happen. And like I said, the number one most important thing is that they consume the content. So they can go to a site, they can just go click, read all the chapters in about 15 minutes, and then boom, they're done. They're pre-sold. They know everything they need to know. Fantastic. Now, what we are going to do, what I would recommend you do, is you also drip it by email. This ensures that, let's say they read the first 2 chapters and then, they hear from upstairs, hey, dinner's ready. Ah, shit. Okay, hang on. They go read dinner, or they go eat dinner. They never come back and finish reading. They get lost. The site goes down, whatever. Okay, they get an email tomorrow. Oh, that's right. I was reading that guide. Okay, I need to go back and finish it, right? So you're doing both. You give them access to the whole thing. They can flip through it, easily navigate through it, read the whole thing. But if they get distracted, tomorrow they're going to get an email about one of the chapters. And the next day they're going to get an email with the next chapter. And so you're doing both. You're dripping with your emails, but you're also just giving them access to the entire thing all at the same time. It's an easily readable, digestible format, and you can easily link to it. It's not a PDF that's going to get lost. What folder did I download that thing to? Right? You want to remove all barriers to consumption. And once that happens, and it's a banger of a guide. So, I mean, this should help you tremendously. This is available in the Inner Circle. It's free. It's not an add-on or anything like that. You can just go in, get it. And of course, like the copywriting mini course that is inside of it is really, really, really good too. I mean, people are liking this thing. People are liking this thing. All right. So go do that. Go get it. Go deploy it. Make it work for you. Okay. Yeah. If you're having audio issues, I would highly, where is it in Inner Circle? Okay, so if you're in, first of all, you get to the Inner Circle by going geary.co/inner circle. So if you're not a member, it's super cheap. It's easy. Everybody can get in, okay? And then you go to Circle, Inner Circle, and then you're gonna go down to Agency Resources. And it's gonna be right there at the very top of the, well, I guess it depends on how you've sorted these, but it should be like newest first. And it should put that right. And I mean, there's a bunch of agency resources in there, and then there's a bunch of agency trainings and sales trainings, but a lot of great stuff in there, okay? But that's where you find that particular guide. Okay, let's move on to Etch. But yeah, like I was saying, if audio issues, just refresh YouTube. It's usually you, it's usually not me. Or it's YouTube, and you can just, a quick refresh will help everybody. All right, let me pull up my agenda. Okay, so what has happened since the first launch? You remember back early September, I did a series of live streams to pre-sell and pre-launch Etch. And at that time, we had some proofs of concept. We didn't have much code written at all. There was nothing to show people. I explained that we can't show you anything because we believe in building tools with the people who are going to be using the tools. And so if we make a bunch of architectural decisions, if we make just a whole slew of decisions before people have a chance to participate in the process, things have to go backwards, not forwards. Because if people are like, we don't like that, we just saw this with Oxy 6, for example, right? Like 2 years of work, it's like in the dark at night, just all this work. And then out comes the thing out of the shadows, and people are like, wah, wah. Like, okay. Now, like, you realize the amount of, I mean, they're not going to do it because it's like, they don't really, I don't think they care what you think all that much. But if they were going to fundamentally change a lot of that stuff, I mean, it is such a long road, and now so much technical debt that they have to wade through to be able to do that stuff. And why not just let people participate in the process? Like, that's what we've always done. We did it with automatic CSS. We did it with frames. We did it with everything that we've done. That's how we've done it. At the Inner Circle, even. The Inner Circle, even. There was not a single training inside of the Inner Circle when I launched the Inner Circle. I just was like, all right, we're just going to start. We're going to do this together. It's just how we've always done things. And it's a really, really good way to do them. Of course, a lot of people are critical of that. I don't know why. I mean, we see so many there's so many products. I think people forget how many products are in the graveyard of WordPress. Like, WordPress has a graveyard of like attempted efforts that went absolutely nowhere. And so many of them went nowhere for two reasons. One, they built something that people didn't really want or need, or like they built it in a way that just wasn't practical. And so when they finally delivered the thing, people were like, that kind of sucks. And so of course it's not going to be successful. It's not going to take off. And number two, they ran out of money. And by the way, those two things definitely can't go together. It can't suck and you don't have money to make it better now, right? You're out of money to fix it after everybody decided it sucked. Well, of course, that's a dead product. And so what we do, because I think it's the only like smart way to do it, is let's take care of the money thing up front, and let's take care of the it sucks thing, because it can't. If everybody's helping you build it and you're building based on all of that constant feedback and affirmation and criticism and yada yada yada, it can't suck. Like, so you just like, let's just get the two things that kill almost every product. Let's just make those a non-issue from like day one. And of course you get, I mean, people on the internet whine about everything and anything and did, but you can clearly see like, we continue to demonstrate that it's a successful process, right? Okay. So we did that. We did the pre-launch. We got started almost immediately on actually getting things going with the code base and the architecture and yada, yada, yada. And if you don't know, we are on essentially what is a weekly release schedule. And this is because we do not release finished iterations of things. We release progress iterations. And so regardless of what the progress is, it might be a small semblance of progress on a larger thing that gets released and people get to see it and touch it and feel it and the weird ones smell it. And it's just, that's what we do. And people love it. I think if you ask people in the Etch community, they love the fact that every single week there's something to look forward to. Every single week and it might be a small thing, it might be a big thing. It might be a piece of a bigger puzzle, okay? But every single week they get to play with something. And it's really fun and it's really exciting. And I usually do a release video for it. And what we can do here, we'll go to the changelog. If you have not reviewed the changelog, I would do so. Like you can go all the way back. I don't even know. We may need to add pagination to this thing. I don't even know if this is properly paginated. But you can see and you can go to the full changelog for any of these things and just kind of see what's been going on, when have these things been happening. You could see pretty much every single week there's a release and a release and a release. And what it's culminated to, we are now almost 6 months into development. Now let's talk about the timelines. I know another objection that I constantly heard was this thing's not gonna be ready for at least 2 years. This thing's not gonna be ready for 3 years. Actually, in the pitch, I said our goal is 1 year for brochure websites and 3 years for enterprise. Now, I thought when you say 1 year, 1 being the key, 1 year for brochure websites and 3 years for enterprise sites, I thought that was fairly clear. Somehow, some way, all of the detractors, all of the people who like to think negatively and talk negatively about everything in life, only heard 3. They only heard the number 3. So they've been, I'm reading comments, they're just telling everybody they can get their hands on. Like, it's gonna be 3 years before anything's done. What? Okay, I guess I just don't have any listening skills. But in fact, I was confident, and we're ahead of schedule, we're on track. I was confident that in less than a year, like if you're fairly risk, if you're not like super tight with your risk aversion, okay, you could be building sites much sooner. Like for example, I will be building, my goal is this Etch website right here will be built with Etch starting, if not this month, next month, probably for sure, like starting next month. Now, I wouldn't recommend that for everybody, obviously, but it is possible. It is possible to do it. That's the point. And since it's possible, I will therefore do it. But we are ahead of schedule. And I knew we were going to be ahead of schedule. I was confident that we were going to be ahead of schedule for one reason and one reason only. When I look at, you look at okay, because people will say all the time, Kevin, it took Bricks 2 years to get to da-da-da-da. Kevin, look, they've been developing Oxygen 6 for 2 years and they already started with Breakdance's architecture. I hear all this 2 years stuff over and over and over again. Zion took 2 years. Everybody takes 2 years. Okay, well, you have to know something about prioritization of features in all of these other page builders, and it always goes back to the same fundamental difference in premise, okay? And I don't think I need to write an article specifically about the premise. I allude to it a little bit in this article right here, is Etch a WordPress page builder, okay? A little bit, I believe, in this one, who is Etch for, right here. I need to do a specific article on the premise because this is the entire shebang right here. This is the difference maker in every capacity. The premise of every page builder in existence that I know of, except for perhaps the original Oxygen, but still a little bit, Still a lot in the original Oxygen. I really fundamentally, truthfully do not think that there's been a page builder that followed our premise 100%. In some form or fashion, to a large degree, I'm trying to make sure I don't talk in absolutes here. Pretty much every page builder in existence had the premise of this. Beginners are the only users of page builders. It's like a two-part premise. Beginners are the only users of page builders. Therefore, we must design a page builder to be as easy as possible to use for a beginner. Okay, so those are the two parts of the fundamental premise that every other tool was built around and designed around. And thus, if that is your premise, you have to ask lots of questions about how to do that, and you're going to get very specific answers. Now, if you start with a completely different premise, you get to ask different questions and you get to have dramatically different answers. Etch is the first tool that that first believes, okay, maybe in the past, beginners were the only people who use page builders, or even intermediate people, whatever. But that's because they were all designed for those people. And when a professional or somebody who really understands development looked at those tools, they immediately said, no, not for me. And thus they didn't use them. And this perpetuated the cycle. And then page builders got a reputation of bad code output, limiting features, no scalability, no maintainability. This is where the reputation came from. The reputation came from the design, which came from the original premise. Etch is the first tool that says, no, I think if the tool was designed and built properly, not only would professionals want to use it, it would dramatically expedite their productivity. It would unify their entire workflow. They would actually love it. If it was designed for them, they would actually love it. And thus, Etch set out to say, how can we do that? What would it look like if we built something for actual professionals that they would love to use and that would actually innovate their workflow? The same levels of innovation that we brought to ACSS, for example. And so that's just a fundamentally different premise with a fundamentally different question. Okay, and so you end up with a fundamentally different product, and so that's what we've been doing essentially, and what we need to do now. Okay, and so how does that speak to timeline? I think that's what I was getting at. Timeline. How did I know that everything was going to happen faster than it's happened anywhere else? Well, there are fundamental things that you need to be able to do. A page builder needs to be able to do X, Y, Z in order for people to use it to build a website. When you are building something for beginners, you actually don't focus on those fundamentals. You focus on other things. For example, there are 350 plus CSS styling inputs. And if our priority was, if we said people will not be able to use this tool until all of those inputs exist, and all of those inputs are engineered, which, by the way, many of them have to be handled on a case-by-case basis. I would go read this article right here, The Pros and Cons of CSS Styling Inputs. Very, very informative article here, and it just scratches the surface. You could literally spend an entire year just on this feature alone, just on CSS styling inputs. That's it. You could, if you're going to engineer them to death like so many builders do, you could spend a year of time and resources just on this part right here, and many do. So if you're asking yourself, why did it take Bricks 2 years? Why did it take Oxygen 6 2 years when they already had Breakdance's architecture to start from? Because of this stuff. This is a time-consuming aspect of a page builder, okay? Think about all of the blocks, the pre-done blocks in Breakdance and Bricks that do not need to exist. I've gone down the list. There's 30 blocks that had to be constructed and architected and engineered and tested that just simply don't need to exist. They only exist because the page builder was like, wow, I mean, a beginner can't build a card. We got to build a card thing so that they can just have a card. They're not gonna have a card if we don't have a card thing, you know? And so now they're spending, what, a month architecting a card thing? You don't need to do that shit. So when I looked at all of the existing tools and I was like, well, I mean, they're all built around the wrong premise to start from. And thus they go into these rabbit holes that just you don't need to go down these things, okay? If you're building a professional tool, we know people know how to build a card, okay? So we don't have to build a card component. We know that if people really, really need to get their work done, they could write CSS. Boom, done. And then we also know, yeah, they do need CSS inputs. We'll talk about this in a minute, and we'll talk about how we're doing CSS inputs dramatically different than anybody else has ever done them before, and the pros that come out of that. Like literally this list of the cons, there's 10 of them, 10 really big cons. We eliminated every single one of them. Every single one of these. So there is no cost to using CSS inputs in Etch. And there's a cost to using CSS inputs in every other interface. But again, so instead of architecting, oh, how do we make the cutest margin layout box thing? How do we make it as easy as possible for beginners to put a margin value? I don't care. I care about what professionals care about, which is solving all these big problems with CSS inputs. So that's what we started with. That's what we solved first. We'll make them cute later. They don't need to be cute right now, okay? That we need to get our work done right now. That's what we need to do. And so this is why we prioritizing components, prioritizing looping, prioritizing conditions, prioritizing all the stuff that really matters. Because understanding that the builder already lets you, it already writes basic HTML for you. It already allows you to author your CSS in a much better way, by the way. It already allows you to do anything you want to do with selectors, okay? Like, that's the majority of the work. And then we do heavy lifting of looping and conditions and components and yada, 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 right? That's why we're way ahead. That's why we're way ahead. Because we're not distracted by how do we make it so easy for somebody who doesn't know what they're doing? Because it's not who the tool is designed for. And if you are a beginner that doesn't know what you're doing, it doesn't mean Etch is not for you. For sure, like you have to read this article. Who is Etch for? If you are planning on doing a lot of work in this industry, you want to be a freelancer, you want to be an agency, you are going to learn. We are going to teach you. We are going to be a leader, as we have always been, in education and empowerment, actual empowerment of real skills. And then you're going to love Etch. You're going to love Etch. What we're not going to do is design a tool that allows you to cut every corner imaginable and allows you to continue not knowing what you're doing and yada. Like that's what we're not doing. That's what we're not doing. So these big differences in philosophy are why we are so it's not the only reason, okay? You do have to have a absolute baller of a team, right? We're gonna get maybe Etch property one day. It's gonna have to be a barn. It's gonna have to be a barn because there's too many goats on the team. You know what I'm saying? Like it's gotta be that kind of thing. So, all right, so that was dad joke territory, maybe. Okay, let's move on. We did a changelog review. Let's do a current features review. This will go into more detail on like what we've been prioritizing, okay? All right. So I just created this little quick page. Obviously, we're gonna be doing, Nick is here. Nick Ars is going to be working on the design of our new website. This, by the way, is even the old colors and old everything, right? But I just wanted a page that kind of starts to put this kind of stuff together to show what is currently working and currently available. This is not a roadmap. This is not a let's hope. Okay, let's hope and pray these things exist one day. That these things currently exist. And I think when people come to the March 31st event and they see Etch as it's coming together, and then they juxtapose what they're seeing with a 6-month timeline, it's gonna be a little bit of a head scratcher. Like people are already asking me every release we do, the comments are literally like, why did it take everybody else so long to do what just got done in like 3 sprints, in like 2 weeks, in like 3 weeks? Like, that's kind of the pace we're on. And one of these things, like the Gutenberg engine, I'm just calling it the Gutenberg engine. There's more aspects to it. The main feature here is the automatic block authoring. There's things that people didn't even think that we were going to be able to do that it's already doing. They weren't even sure that that was even possible to begin with, but it's already happening, and it's been happening for a while. The auto block authoring is one of those things. Now, these things have to get more robust. Okay, for sure, they have to get more robust. But at the fundamental level, it's already happening. So like you build something in Etch right now, the blocks are authored. By the way, with core native blocks, not third-party blocks. These are not Etch blocks being used. This is literally like you could deactivate Etch and all these blocks are still going to exist. Okay. We have to add more features related to like how the styling is going to stay or how the JavaScript is going to remain around if you did disable Etch or something like that. You wouldn't really want to disable Etch. There's no point in disabling Etch, but we are trying to liberate data. So Etch obviously liberates your data out of Etch. Unlike every other page builder where it's locked in, Etch liberates your data into the block editor, into native custom fields, into all of that stuff. So there's a big data liberation side to that, but then there's a client editing aspect to it. If your clients want to edit things, freely in a simple form and fashion, they can just use the block editor to do that. They don't ever have to open Etch or go into Etch, and we don't have to build a client editing interface of any kind. That is the simplified interface for client editing. And it'll just continue to get better and better and more robust. The modular interface, and I do want to speak to letting the community that we're working with actually have a say and actually determine the prioritization of some of these things. For me, a modular interface was an icing on the cake kind of thing. Like, yeah, we'll get there at some point. It'll be great. Yeah, I agree. It'll be fantastic. But actually what if it were up to me, point is, if it were up to me, this would not be done right now. This would not be a feature currently. This would have been way further down the list. But they said, no, we need that to happen like now, like sooner rather than later. And we said, okay, all right, we'll prioritize the modular interface. And now Etch has a completely modular interface. And I'm actually glad that they said that, because actually in terms of UI and development, there's been a lot of decisions that we have had to make that we would have needed to make later when there was way more technical debt. Because a modular interface is not easy. Like sometimes when you move sidebar to a bottom bar, for example, it has to change a little bit in its behavior, and it has to be architected in such a way to perhaps allow for that. And so doing that earlier rather than later was actually a very smart move. But we only did that because the community said that was very important to them. So these are examples of how this kind of working relationship really matters and really helps things. We've got keyboard shortcuts for things already going, a dynamic data engine. Did you know right now in Etch, if I want to create a team section, I want to display my team, like this page right here. Like if you go to digital gravy right here. This is a simple example, okay? You go here, okay? Here's our team right here. This is a simple little grid. Now, this is a custom post type. These are posts in a custom post type. This is dynamic data. It's pulled in the title and a custom field for their, this is their name, and this is their title, and this is the featured image, okay? And this card really ought to be a component. It should be a team card, and it should be a component so that it's fully controllable with its HTML and its conditions and anything else that needs to live inside of it. You can't build this in bricks the way I just described. You can do the loop, but you can't do the component part. The components in bricks are too limited. They don't have component variations. They don't have nested components. They're not safe to use currently in bricks. Now, bricks teased components a year and a half ago. And then a year and a half later, we were given component functionality that essentially mirrored what was previewed a year and a half before. In Etch, currently, you can build a card component called a team card. You can map props to all of these different areas. You can nest components. You can use our conditional logic engine to create component variations, which we are doing that very differently than has ever been done before. It's actually never really been done before in an environment like this. It is insanely flexible, the way that conditions work. And literally every part of the component can be conditioned. So there's zero limitations. And so you can have components with variations and conditions, and then you can put them in a loop. And by the way, our loop works different than any other loop. You put them in a loop, you can loop through them. And by the way, the previewing of data is instant. There's no delay. There's no nothing. It's an instant. You will see all of this on March 31st, but you can already do all of this inside of Etch. It is already working. These are things that don't work in any other environment currently. Which is, when you see that, it's like a little bit of a head scratcher. Like what? It's just not going to make sense. It's not going to make sense, but I made sense of it. I told you all of these other tools are focused on a lot of things that don't really matter to you. They're focused heavily on things that matter to people who don't know what they're doing. And that sucks for you because you're like, I know what I'm doing. Why don't you give me features I care about? And they're like, well, we would do that. But the money we're chasing is found in the pockets of people who don't know what they're doing. And that's who we prioritize. That's what all of these tools are not telling you, but are really saying. Like when you say, I want to be able to loop data from an external API, Etch says, so do we. That's like one of our top priorities, right? Where another tool goes, no beginner knows how to do that. They don't even know what you're talking about. They would never have a need for that. Yeah, we'll do that someday. Okay, this is what you're gonna run into. Like you have to ultimately at some point make a choice whether you are gonna have a relationship with a tool that prioritizes your needs or prioritizes the needs of somebody that's not like you. And, you can stick with the tools that you're currently with, but you're just gonna continue to get left behind. And faster and faster and faster, okay? And you're gonna see this visualized on March 31st. Now, I will tell you what I have planned for March 31st, for the second launch, second round, whatever you wanna call it. Because I was heavily criticized in the first one for like, oh, it's just a sales pitch, the promises, vaporware, okay. People that followed ACSS and they knew what was coming. They knew what was going to happen. They knew that everything being said was actually going to happen. They knew that it was very likely to happen on the timeline that we said it was going to happen in. And that's why they bought. That's why 1,522 people said yes in 72 hours. Okay. And that was 22 more. Actually, I wanted to do it at 1,000 first, and then everybody was like, no, do 15. Okay, and then it became 1,522 because, there's always some edge cases, people you make promises to. But it was like 72 hours, but still criticized. Oh, it's just a sales pitch. It's bullshit. It's nothing to look at. Yada, yada, yada. Okay. So you know what March 31st is going to be? Which, by the way, we don't even need to do a March 31st thing. I'm doing it because... one, I love it when people talk endless amounts of shit and then you just stick the thing right in their face, right back at you. Here you go. Look at it. Now what? Right? That's part of it. The second part of it is I think, there are people legitimately, there are lots of people who are like, by principle, like, Kevin, I believe you. I trust you. I fully believe you're going to do this. But in principle, I don't really want to buy something until I've seen it. And so they were just like, I am going to continue sitting on the fence. And that's legitimate. We asked people to take a risk. That's what we asked. And if you're like, I want to take the risk, but it's a risk. And I don't really want to take the risk right now. I'll take the risk later, even if it's a little bit more costly. Fine. That's totally legitimate. Totally legitimate. I want to now give those people a chance to see something because we didn't give them that chance the first time around and say yes if they want to say yes, which means that March 31st will not be a pitch of any kind. March 31st will literally be, I get on, hi, thanks for coming. Let me fire this thing up. Let's take a look at what it does. I'm going to build something in it and you're going to watch it. And then you're going to ask me a bunch of questions and I'm going to answer those questions. And you're going to have 72 hours to get your butt in the door before it shuts down again. And if you want in, you get in. If you don't want in, you don't want in. And that's fine. And we're all going to move on. And then I'll see you again in another 6 months. I'll see you again in September. There is no pitch needed at this point. All you have to do is watch the thing being used, and you are going to come to the conclusion that we already know you're going to come to. Okay, and so there's no pitch needed. There was a pitch needed last September because nothing existed. And we needed to protect the money, and we needed to protect the user participation, because we needed to get those two things that cause everything to fail. We need to get those two things out of the way, make sure that they don't exist, and then we can have a successful project, and we know it's going to be a successful project. So let's get those things out of the way. You do that with a pitch, and now we don't need a pitch. Now the things exist, and now you just show them. And now everybody comes to the correct conclusion, okay? So that's what March 31st is going to be all about. So if you were wanting substance in the first one, when there was no possibility of substance other than philosophy and our plans and our history and all of that, all it's going to be is substance now. That's it. All it's going to be is substance. So March 31st is going to be very fun, and I love showing it off. It's fun to use. It's snappy as hell. It's if you're like, you know, kind of annoyed by builder lag and builder things like that, like for example, just when you watch a loop get built and you see things render when I say instantly on the canvas, I mean instantly. There is no faster rendering. It is very, very, very nice to use. Okay, so let's see. Okay, what are we buttoning up? I also want to talk about breakpoints. I got in there a little bit myself. You know what I'm saying? I got it in there a little bit. And because we didn't have any breakpoint preview icons, which I was like, maybe I can handle that a little bit. I think I got a C+ from the team on my sveltage. Okay, but nevertheless they work. And they're architected in such a way, I think they need a little bit of refactoring, but they're architected in such a way that all the things that we want to do with breakpoints, which I want to talk about. In fact, I'm going to bring up a Excalidraw in a second, I think. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I think it's a good discussion point to talk about how we're doing some things differently, because we are going to handle responsive controls differently in Etch. Why? To solve major problems that exist in every other tool with these things. So I think that's a good discussion point. We'll save that for just a minute. What are we buttoning up before March 31st? So what are we doing right now? Well, this sprint right now, we're working heavily on CSS inputs, the infrastructure for that, how we're navigating CSS inputs, which is going to be different than you've seen before in other builders. We are, let's see, var calc wrapping is coming, recipe expansion is coming. These things are very important to general productivity. Maybe AutoBIM. You know, I told them, hey, if AutoBIM can't make it in by March 31st, I understand. But whenever they hear that, you know, they kind of take it as a challenge. Like, no, we're going to try to fit it in. You know, I know they do. So maybe, but that's a maybe. That's not a promise. Some auto block authoring cleanup stuff, a lot of general UI stuff. We kind of radically changed the UI in terms of like colors and some UX stuff. Just like last week, we got to clean up some more of that stuff. We have a feature freeze though. This is very important. We have a feature freeze Monday. We have an entire week where there are no new things allowed. It is just clean up everything that's there. And just get it ready as ready as it can be for March 31st, which obviously is the halfway mark on the way to fully launching it. Like September was the goal. And you know, like I said, we're ahead of schedule. I think you're going to see that. I think it's going to be fantastic, but I am going to start building things with Etch for sure next month. If not toward the end of this month. Okay. Timeline for building sites. Because I know people are going to ask that. I get asked that all the time. Okay, so it's a risk aversion question. If it's a small site and you're like, dude, something breaks, I'm willing to fix it. I'm willing to rebuild it. If something gets refactored and something stops working, I'm willing to go in there and just patch it up, whatever. If it's that kind of project, like, I would love for you to start building stuff with it like next month, the end of next month. What's missing right now is our templating architecture. But it's literally the first thing we're going to start working on right after the March 31st launch. I told him, we could have worked on it sooner. I was like, look, we're doing stuff like auto block authoring. We're doing stuff like CSS input sync. We didn't even finish our features review, right? You can go there and read it yourself. I don't have to read it to you, okay? I'm not the it's not a picture book. It's not kindergarten. Okay, you can go read it, right? There's a lot of stuff that we are doing that easily prove, like we're doing things that no other tool is doing. So when I told the team, I was like, I think they know we can do templates. Like we don't have to, like, there's other important things that we can stick in before March 31st. So that's what we did. But you do need templating to build a real website, right? So that's going to be the first thing that we do after the March 31st launch. And once templating engine is in there, it's a done deal. Like I'm going to start building sites with it for sure. And it just is going to be, it's a question for every single user of how much risk you want to take. I would say start with small projects, right? And then work your way up to medium size and on from there. But, and I'll let the team weigh in, the dev team weigh in on that, on the safety of that and all of, I'm sure they have extra opinions around that stuff. Okay, I'm gonna open up to Q&A. First, we're gonna talk about breakpoints. Why don't let me pull it up on this screen because I don't know what's gonna come up in Excalidraw when I open it. Wait, was that okay, who cares? Who cares? I think there's not much. Okay, here's Etch breakpoints. I don't do much in Excalidraw, but I needed to do this. So just talking about our breakpoint manager a little bit. Now, this is not even, this is a wireframe that, like, don't look at this as details of like, yeah, it's definitely going to be like that. It's never going to be like that once it goes through 5 different other people's opinions and yada, yada, yada. But the important things are here. So one being, first of all, I thought it would be pretty cool, okay? Because we got to start talking about container queries. And when you do container queries, you can do named container queries, and they're always like custom values. And no other tool has tackled container queries yet. And to me, they should live with the breakpoint manager. Like if you're managing breakpoints, you can flip over and just manage your container queries as well, which I think would be a really, really cool thing. But also managing breakpoints that are not necessarily previewable. Like you could have a bunch of custom breakpoints that apply to various components or various sections or elements or whatever that you don't necessarily need in like the preview bar, but they need to exist in the code. So let's talk about some of the interesting bits here, right? So note number 1, previewing breakpoints should not clear the CSS editor. If you know about every other tool thought, yeah, we should totally clear the CSS editor. If they've done CSS at desktop and they select tablet, we should definitely show them a clean CSS input for writing code at that breakpoint. And Etch actually says, no, that should not be the case. 100% that should not happen, right? Does anybody know why that should not happen? We could do a little pop quiz here. Does anybody know why we should definitely not clear the CSS? Has anybody run into the problem where you style this thing at desktop, you style it at maybe you have 6 breakpoints, maybe you have 5 breakpoints, maybe you've gone ham with the breakpoints. So you write styles of these different breakpoints, and then you can only see, like now you've got the behavior of a thing, like a section, and you can see it behaving a certain way. You have no idea where those changes are coming from. You got to hunt down from breakpoint to breakpoint. And then sometimes when you are writing code for a breakpoint, you have to see what's happening at other breakpoints to know what needs to happen at this breakpoint. But if you clear the CSS box, you can't see what's happening at and in order to see what's happening in another breakpoint, you got to go to that breakpoint. And now you can't see the breakpoint you were just on. And you got scattered styles. You got no context for why this thing's happening here, what was happening before. It's awful. It's an atrocity. It should be a crime. It is felonious behavior. It should have never happened. And people should go to jail for it. So we're just not going to do that in Etch. So what it says, the CSS editor retains the same code. The user is expected to write their own media queries or use a Sass mixin or perhaps a builder-specific function of some kind. For example, I'm previewing a breakpoint. I still see my same CSS. I'm ready to write styles for that breakpoint. I could just go at breakpoint and it expands a media query for the exact breakpoint that I'm currently looking at right now. Even if it's not a stored breakpoint. What if I just narrow my windows to some random number and I'm like, I would really like to assign some styles there. And I just type at breakpoint, and it's like, boom, here's your media query for that thing that you're currently previewing. Go ahead and write some CSS there. By the way, you can see all your other CSS because we didn't clear the box, because that should never happen, right? And now you have no scattered styles. You still have full responsive control. You never have to write a media query ever again. Seems pretty good. Seems pretty good. So that's why we should not clear the CSS editor. Previewing breakpoints should clear the CSS inputs, except for showing the currently applied values. And new values placed in the inputs at the currently previewed breakpoint should be added to the CSS inside a media query for that breakpoint so that all of your CSS stays unified, because we are the only tool that actually bidirectionally relates your inputs to your CSS. So when you fill out CSS input, it actually authors the CSS. So when you go to the CSS box, you can see everything that's in the input. And if you change it in CSS, it changes it in the input, and it always stays instantly synced and it never gets out of sync. And then the problem of scattered styles just no longer exists at all. Even when you're using inputs, you have no scattered styles. They're always in one place. And it's properly written into media queries. This is just how I think things should work in this regard. The canvas should have a handle that allows the user to preview any device with, not just, oh, here's this breakpoint, that breakpoint that you pre-programmed, right? There needs to be a function to generate a custom media query. We already talked about that. And then adding CSS to the inputs would also trigger the auto creation of a media query at the current canvas size. So there's a lot of things that we are doing differently. And this is just one example of, like, we could have just said, hey, every other builder's got CSS preview things, and there's a certain behavior that users are used to when they interact with this. And we don't, should we really spend time re-engineering this? Should we really spend time making this better? Or should we just copy what they have, check the box, and move on to the next thing, because we're just trying to get a page builder out to market as fast as we possibly can? I mean, we could have said that. We could have said that. We haven't said that about any single part of it. And one reason is because I look at the thing and I go, well, in every other tool, are there major problems with doing it this way? Yes, it turns out there is. So no, we can't just do that. We can't just copy the obvious laundry list of problems that have been exposed by doing it this old way. Now, if we come across a methodology where we ask the question, well, I mean, are there big problems with doing it this way? And it turns out, no, that's actually, it seems like it's really good to do it that way. Then we'll do it that way. The thing is, unfortunately, we keep finding major problems with the way things have always been done. And so we have to do a lot of rethinking and re-engineering, and it's creating a much better experience for people. Okay, let's go into Q&A. I don't really have anything else on my list that I wanted to cover. And where are we at on time? Oh, that's an hour. Okay, so we got 30 minutes dedicated to Q&A. Because we do have a hard 90-minute cutoff for WDD Live these days. Trying to be disciplined to that. I've been doing a very good job. I think we're only over on one of them. So yes, let's see here. Let's go to Q&A. I'm going to do hashtag Q search. All right. Is frames integrated in Etch? I'm ready to pull the trigger for bricks plus frames, but wondering if I should hold off for Etch. Yeah, let's explain this. It's a very, very popular question. The dynamic elements. See, I have to be very careful with my language, because I am a big proponent of getting away from the confusing terms that all of these builders have used. These things have been called components in the past. They're not components, okay? An accordion is not a component. Unless you make it a component, then it's a component. But an accordion by itself, not a component. Let me close this up. Dynamic elements are what they're called. A carousel, a modal, an accordion, a trigger, a yada, 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 yada. These are dynamic elements. They're not just basic elements. Obviously, there's some JavaScript involved. There's some other stuff going on. So we're calling them dynamic elements. Those things that are part of frames are being re-engineered in Etch and will be available for all Etch users. It is fundamental when you're building a website that you need an accordion, that you need a modal, that you need a carousel, that you need a this and a that. Those are not going, we could make those add-ons. There could be Etch Pro. That's how you get it. You can have the Etch free version that allows you to do very basic stuff. But the minute you want to add a carousel, well, you need to get your wallet out, sir. Now, why don't we just buy the Pro tool because you're a pro or you want to be a pro. You're aspiring to be a pro. Just buy the Pro tool and then you just have access to everything. There's no upsells. There's no like, oh, well, gotta get my wallet back out. With the exception of probably enterprise, because there's some very, very heavy architectural things that are going to take a lot of time and a lot of money, and they're not really going to apply to a vast majority of regular users. Probably the enterprise level really, really, really cares about some of that stuff, and maybe there's going to be an enterprise level for that. But no decisions have been made on that kind of stuff yet. But like the idea that we would like upsell you on a modal. Or like a pack of dynamic elements that actually allow you to build the pages that you wanted to build in the first. That's kind of crazy to me. So we're not going to do that. Those are all going to be available by default. The pattern library of frames is going to all be rebuilt in Etch, and you will still need a frames license for that. So if you want to unlock the pattern library for all the starter patterns that are in frames, that's what your frames license would be used for. And by the way, the price of frames just for the pattern library, that's what most people buy it for. It's the amount of money you can make just on one wireframe. You do one wireframe for your client, you already made back your money. Not even the website, not even the entire website and the whole project. Just the wireframe, just one wireframe page, pretty much. If you're pricing your wireframes correctly, done deal. So. The cost to value ratio is stupid. You should buy frames. You're going to plug in your license in Etch, and you're going to get access to the whole pattern library. Okay. If I'm using Etch on a tablet, can I shake it to start over? That is one of the enterprise level features, Joe. But yeah, that would be nice. That's obviously if you're from Europe. Okay, if you're not from the US, you might not be familiar with the Etch-a-Sketch toy from the 90s or the 80s or I don't even know what era it's from. I just remember I had a few. And that was kind of it was a little bit of the inspiration for the name Etch, came from Etch-a-Sketch, and that's what he's referring to. If you're completely lost on that reference, you would draw things on the tablet. It's a little tablet. You would draw things with these, it's got wheels, and the wheels control the sketch you're making, right? And then when you were done with it, you just shake it and it all goes away, right? And that was very fun. It's a very fun tool. Okay, can you show me how to disable the frames import check that happens in Bricks? Super annoying. That's a Bricks feature. It's a feature that they never should have. I mean, I guess it's a kind of a half-ass iteration of a kind of an important feature perhaps, but it just became a tremendous annoyance for every user. But I don't know exactly how to turn it off. I haven't looked since then. I've been living in Etch these days. That's the thing. Can I liberate my data from Gutenberg instead? I hate it. Well, the good thing is you don't have to use Gutenberg ever. The automatic block authoring will never get in your way. It won't matter to you. You can ignore it if you want to ignore it. Just ignore it. Have you checked the right place tool that is being shared nowadays? They also use the new era statement. Yeah, we got a few people using the new era statement now. What I'm saying. Now, I will say right place, from what I've seen, does appear to be a next era tool for sure. My problem is that there's some era 3 tools that just felt like they could maybe start calling themselves a next era tool or an era 4 tool, and that's marketing stuff. But they, and maybe in some ways they can back it up, but not in all the ways. Not in all the ways. There's a specific kind of thing that's needed to be an era 4 tool. Will Etch support ACSS in a closer relationship than other builders? Yes. Yes, it will. Yeah. Etch will essentially be the flagship builder for ACSS. Of course, we'll still integrate with Bricks and all these other tools. We're not, it's not like, oh, now we have Etch, we're only going to do Etch stuff. We, as a principle, now what's been unfortunate about this is no other tools can do their fucking job right. That's been the problem. So it's like we integrate with Bricks. We integrate with Quickly. Quickly died. Thanks. Great. Fantastic. We integrate with, what's another one? What's the blocks one? Generate blocks. Well, I mean, the problem is, one, it's like, I don't know how many people use, here's my honest assessment of Generate blocks. I don't know what percentage of Generate blocks users, and I would guess it's very low, use Generate blocks as a page builder. I know that tons of people add Generate blocks just to have access to blocks that Gutenberg doesn't have because Gutenberg's a trash can, right? And so they're like, well, I mean, I need more than this, right? So they add Generate blocks, but are they really like page building with it from scratch to the point where a framework like automatic CSS that's designed for a page building workflow makes sense to them? And I don't think the answer is like, it's not a high percentage is my guess. So that was kind of like all right, we did it, but, and then there's still limitations. Like it's just because the block editor adds limitations. It's just not, dude, anybody, I watch other YouTubers, I watch people building in the block editor, and I'm just like, why are you doing this to yourself? Why do you, like, what level of self-hatred is in there? I'm joking. It's a joke. But seriously, no, who enjoys that? It's just constantly putting up with nonsense to get your work done. And why? Why? Like when there's so many better tools available, what are you doing? What are you, and they did this whole, well, it's close to core. It's close to core. It's close to core. Do you not know who Matt Mullenweg is? Like, I really, like when Matt started his whole tirade, and now, what is the conclusion of all of this? Remember when I said, how about we just get the tape out. Let's just look at the tape, review the tape. Okay, let's do a film review session. Film review, I do this for my softball team. We can do a film review session. Many, many, many months ago, I'm terrible with time, so I don't know how many months ago it was. It was probably at least a year, probably maybe 2 years. I don't even know at this point. I said, being close to core with a third-party tool like Generate Blocks, like name any of them. If it's a third-party layer, you're not any closer to core than I am, okay? With Bricks or Oxygen or Etch, right? Well, Etch is the closest possible thing to core that you could possibly get because it authors everything you do to core blocks. So it is literally the closest to core that you can get other than just using core outright. It's even closer to core than creating custom ACF blocks for core that everybody likes to do. It's even closer to core than that. But I said, you're not any closer to core than any of us. Like, first of all, you're relying on a third-party tool, and if that third-party tool doesn't exist, all of your blocks go poof. How is that close to core? I never understood that argument. But then I also said, I'm not so sure there's a tremendous value to being close to core. Core, Gutenberg, could die tomorrow. It could get struck by lightning. And what if they decide? Because I was looking at adoption rates. I was looking at a 7-year timeline. They've been working on this thing for 7 years. And at some point, the investors go, I don't think that Gutenberg project's really going to take off the way we initially thought. And in fact, it causes a lot of problems. We're either going to stop touching it or we're going to remove it and make it optional. That to me was a possibility. And then something happened that none of us foresaw happening. Matt got in a big fight with WP Engine. And he is losing that fight. And due to losing that fight, I think, he is essentially pulling funding for what? For core. So all of the things people thought were going to happen to Gutenberg now no longer have funding. So now what? Now where are all the it's close to core people? Where are they at now? Like, review the tape. I said it didn't matter all that much to be close to core because any number of these things could happen. And that's just as much risk as using something like Bricks. I would actually stand to my conclusion now is if you have a third-party provider that you trust, like us, or if you trust Generate, whatever, I mean, they rely on the block editor. They rely on core. Oh God, that's scary. And when I say core, I mean the block editor, okay, Gutenberg, right? The core editor, I guess I should say, not the core CMS or anything like that. That's like, I mean, that's a dinosaur. That shit's just build on top of that. You're fine, right? But Gutenberg was an experiment. It was always an experiment. And to me, experiments like that are very risky. And I said, you guys are taking a big risk, okay? This close to core stuff still seems very risky to me. I don't know exactly why. I'm just telling you, I think there's a lot of risk there still. And now we see, well, the funding got pulled for it. So now, like, what I said might happen, I didn't know the exact details, but what I said might happen actually happened. Okay, and now what is the kind of conclusion? I mean, if you have something like Etch that essentially either makes Gutenberg irrelevant or leverages it to the best of its capabilities, its current capabilities, and doesn't matter if it goes forward any further, okay, doesn't matter. It's fairly irrelevant either way. And then it solves the problem of, well, Kevin, I mean, I hate the media library in WordPress. Hey, me too. Hey, Kevin, I hate that WordPress doesn't have custom fields natively. Me too. And custom post types, me too. And bidirectional relationships, me too. All the architecture is there, but the UI is not there. So the tool, the third-party tool that you're using does all of these things that you've always been wanting, and it's with a trusted provider who's well-funded and has a good track record. Doesn't that feel way safer to you? By the way, who's motivated by your dollars, where every time there's a problem with core, you know what the answer is? Well, it's open source. I mean, this is just what you got to deal with. And I mean, if you hate it so much, why don't you get in there and fix it? Why don't you contribute? Why don't you give us free labor and free time? That's the response you will get every time. Where I can't say that. If someone's like, Kevin, Etch is broken, it's doing this right, I got to go fix it. Otherwise, people are going to stop buying it because that's how money works in a market, right? That's way safer to me than being on the core bandwagon where it's like, please, 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 will you give us something? And well, put in a request and maybe in 3 years we'll find some volunteer to come along and do it for you. And then, that's if Matt even approves it at that point in time. I mean, they tell this lofty story. Oh, anybody can contribute. Anybody can be a contributor to WordPress. No, that's not how it works. Stop it. That's politics, that's marketing. It's not how it works. It's not how it's ever worked. Okay. It's just no. Just stop believing that nonsense. You are a beggar. If you're close to core, like you rely on core, you have to beg. You have to beg, plead, borrow, and probably most likely donate your time. And then most likely that's probably going to go nowhere to get anything that you want. Why don't you just pay a third-party developer with a good reputation to build the things that you want? And who's also, by the way, using the tool. Should we go back to the fact that I don't think anybody on Automatic actually uses the tool that they build? Like, doesn't seem like they do. There's just so many disconnections. It is safer. Guys, it is safer and way better to just pay a developer that you trust to build the things you've always wanted and that they also happen to want because you're all in the same boat together. Like, to me, that's like the best of all worlds, right? I got to go over to chat real quick. All right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And by the way, I'll just highlight this comment by Justin. Let's remember all the problems I talked about with other page builders because they target beginners and we got to make this for people who don't know what they're doing. That is WordPress like 1000x'd that philosophy. Oh, we're for everybody. Your grandmother's got to be able to use this tool. Like, my grandmother's going to spin up a WordPress instance on WP Engine? What the fuck? What? So their Gutenberg philosophy as well, it's got to be dumbed down because your grandmother's got it. My grandmother can't even get in to the admin. She's not even going to make it to Gutenberg to click that button. Like, the disconnect in just general understanding of how software is used by you, I just can't fathom it. The synapses are not there in my brain to make these connections, okay? Either I'm dumb or somebody else is. And I'm starting to feel like it's not me. You know what I'm saying? So that is crazy. It's crazy, the disconnects that are not being recognized. Okay. Oh, let's see. I got to go back to questions. It feels like there's just a lot of questions. All right. Is Etch Gutenberg orientated? No, it is not a Gutenberg builder. It is not. It is a completely separate environment that allows you to do your work very fast, very efficiently, with scalability and maintainability and accessibility and everything accounted for. And it just happens to author everything that you do to blocks without any effort on your part whatsoever. It just happens like magic, and you get a lot of benefits from that, but you don't have to use Gutenberg. You don't ever have to touch Gutenberg or really look at Gutenberg. It's just a bonus. Okay. Sometimes the integration of MetaBox is somewhat wonky in Bricks. How's the relationship with Etch? So integrating with custom fields is on the roadmap. It's obviously of great importance. We will start out by supporting ACF custom fields and MetaBox custom fields. And then we will build our own UI for custom post types and custom fields, and you will be able to create them in Etch. It is very important to understand. And this is another thing with the timeline. People are like, well, they're going to engineer custom post types and custom fields, and that's crazy. That's going to take a year in itself. It's not. What you have to understand is ACF is just a UI. MetaBox is just a UI for what natively already exists. You can already register custom post types. All they do is do that for you. They register a custom post type for you. They register custom fields for you. And then what they've added is a bunch of conditional logic for how those fields are shown and displayed and handled and yada, yada, yada. And we're gonna do the exact same thing, just like they did. And there's a lot of stuff they wasted time on that we don't have to waste time on, just like every other thing that we've looked at. And so that's going to come. But first, we will do ACF and MetaBox. That way, you're not limited. If you are an ACF user, you could just install ACF. You can do all the things you normally do. You can pull that data dynamically into Etch. All is well in the world. But at some point, you will come to the conclusion, oh, Etch lets me create the custom post types in my workflow, not in a magic area, literally in the editor environment. It allows me to create the custom fields in the editor environment. Why don't I just do that? Because in ACF, I have to go to a magic area called the ACF dashboard where I have to do these things, which is not the same place where I'm doing the rest of my work. And nobody likes, like, once you've seen a unified workflow, it first of all, it's like, this should have been obvious from the beginning. I don't know. It's just, the obvious things are obvious, right? But yeah, it's just going to be way better to do it inline. Just like we have inline component editing. You know, most component editing does not happen inline. It happens inline in Etch, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic. You eliminate every magic area you eliminate is just one step towards, like, man, hyper efficiency. What theme will you do the demo on? The Etch one or some other theme? Etch doesn't really have a theme. It probably will have an official theme. It's just got to be a block editor enabled theme. But literally all I do right now is I add the create block theme plugin and I generate a blank theme that's like has no bells and whistles whatsoever. I would not recommend you use like 2025. Guys, we have to talk about this. I mean, the decisions on the CSS side of things made by the Gutenberg team, made by the 2024, 2025 theme team, it's chaos. That their CSS decisions are just completely nonsensical. And we're dealing with that right now. We're dealing with, like, all right, how do we get around this? How do we override this? Look at these specificity issues. Look at, what are these names for things? Why is this class repeated 8,000 times? What is going on? The architecture. God, when I say it's a trash can, I mean, it is a trash can full of trash and it's on fire. Like, it is, it is bad, like bad. And it's something we got to deal with, but like, don't install 2020. I mean, 2025 should not be touched. Just don't even touch it. Don't even touch it. You need a blank shit and you need a legit environment to build your work in, and that's it. You don't need any of these, if Automatic built it, I'd stay away from it. Okay. Let's see. When you say there's absolutely no delay when loading external content in loop, can you vouch that every user will have this result in his own conditions? I didn't say with external data. I'm talking about getting data from the database currently. I mean, I don't know. We don't know what the limits of the instantness is. We've added a lot of loops. Like you create a loop and a component and you duplicate it like 50 times and it's still instant. I feel like it's, gonna kind of stay that way for most conditions. I don't know. You would have to talk to the development team about like how much does your actual computer processor play into that, things like that. But all I know is everybody that's using it so far, when I demo it on ZipWP, not even on local, it's actually on a server, it's instant. Can you build a few frames on March 31st? We are going to build, we're going to build a few things. We're going to build a few things. We're going to build a hero section. We're probably going to build a team section. The team card will be a component. We'll put that component in a loop. We'll do the prop mapping. We will pull the data dynamically into the component. We will build some conditional logic into the component with, like, you can add some switches for like, okay, is there going to be a, what would it be like on a team card? It's like show the avatar or not show the avatar. Show the social media icons or not show the social media icons, right? We'll do some basic conditional logic like that. Our conditional logic engine is insanely complex. Like I think it would, what we have to avoid against, because there are going to be beginners and intermediates watching. And if I do crazy conditional logic shit, they might get the idea that that's like required to do, or like that they, like, there's people that are not going to understand some of the stuff that we're doing. And so we do want to kind of keep the demo to just the basics, just show, it's not even really the basics though, like creating a component with conditional logic and it's inline edited, and that's not basic. But that's the basics of a real dynamic, like scalable, maintainable workflow. Those are the requirements for building a dynamic website, in my opinion. You have to be able to loop things. You have to be able to pull dynamic data from the database. That's a lot of days. Dynamic data from the database. And you have to componentize the looped element. If you can't do those things, you can't really say in 2025 that you're a modern, like, capable builder. By the way, with CSS classes and all of that. So that's what we're going to demo. I have one query. Will this be a back-end or front-end builder? It's a front-end builder. I think that's what you're asking. Or that's the answer according to how you're asking that question. I guess one of the things that leads straight off of when can it be used is probably also, by the way, if you're not on the thing yet, I see a lot of people asking about that. Just literally etchwp.com on the homepage and just fill the form out. And that's it. Just do that and you're good to go. You will know all the things you need to know if you fill that form out. When can it be used is probably also when are tutorials available, being a brand new tool. Okay. Yes. This is a great question. So I am going to start using it at the latest sometime in April. And what that means is all of my tutorials on YouTube will be done with Etch. Anything that I do on YouTube will be done with Etch. Then we will start pumping out. Now, things are still rapidly iterating, but as we get closer to September, we will start doing official videos. So there'll be a crap load of unofficial videos on my channel. And then there will start to be a set of official videos as we get closer to the full like V1 launch, right? But this is a question that I think if you've been around ACSS and Bricks, literally what we are known for, like our brand among just like good products, is education. Like that's a box that we have fully checked at all times. Right? I don't think anybody can argue with that. The plethora of content available using our tools is second to none. So I wouldn't worry too much about that part. By the way, also, the first launch was a big invite for affiliates, for people who create content and want to get paid for creating that content. They will begin, like you will start to see all over YouTube, most likely, people like Nick Ars, people like Brendan O'Connell, people like, start to name people that currently do Bricks tutorials, Dave Foy, right? You will start seeing them do stuff with Etch as well. And that's going to be That's just gonna make even more content widely available for you. You are not gonna have any problems or questions with like, how do I even use this tool? How do I even get started? There's just gonna be a flood of content on how to do everything. I will also be redoing Page Building 101. There will be a brand new Page Building 101, fully modernized, fully updated. I think it's been like almost 2 years now. That's crazy since like I started that series. So that'll get redone in Etch. That will be coming as well. Okay, let's see. Do you guys aim Etch suitable for large? It will be like, it's enterprise. It will go a small little brochure website all the way up to enterprise level projects will be covered by Etch. When is the next opportunity? March 31st. Let's see. Will current Etch users be able to update their tier during their March sale? You can really update, you can upgrade at any time. You just got to send us an email and we can take care of it for you. What will be the price for the next sale? I honestly have not even looked at it yet. It's something I'll probably figure that out mid next week at some point. Do you foresee ever incorporating AI into Etch to write code? Yes. So I think it's very important to talk about. Era 4 also happens to coincide with the era of AI. I actually haven't even talked to the team. Well, I think I mentioned this to the team, but I feel that you can't be an Era 4, you just can't. Okay, so one of the premises of Era 4 products is that they give you access to the code, all the code. Like, it's not like, oh, you can write your CSS, but you can't ever touch the HTML. Or like, you know, we give Etch, the big premise is you get access to the code. You could freely write HTML, all the HTML. If you didn't want to use the drag and drop shit and all the cute icons, and you were just like, I would rather just write HTML. You could do that. You could totally do that. You could copy HTML from anywhere and paste it into Etch and it'll all render and it'll author those as black. It's, you know, it's stupid how great it is. So yeah, I mean, think about this for AI. You prompt the AI, it gives you back some bullshit. This happens all the time. This is how you interact with AI. You prompt AI, it gives you back some bullshit. I'm just being honest. Then you're like, that's bullshit. Let me reprompt it. And then it gives you back some slightly better bullshit. And then you reprompt it and it gives you back some slightly, and you just keep reprompting and then you finally are like, well, that's not perfect, but it's workable. Like, I'll just go with that. Okay. This is like how people use AI. Unless you have access to the code. When you have access to the code, you prompt it, it gives you some bullshit, and you go, all right, that's kind of bullshit. I'm gonna fix it up real quick. And then you fix it up real quick. And then you hit publish and you move on with your life. If you don't have access to the code, you have to play a prompting game. And literally you might prompt 10, 20, 30 extra times to get to something workable. Whereas if you just had access to the code, you could just clean up what you were fed. You could just use it as like, and by the way, standards and best practices at like the enterprise level, for example. Who was it? It was, what's her name? Fucking Barn 2 plugins. My brain does not, it has a name database that has like a lock and key on it. Like half the time when I'm trying to think of someone's name, can't get in there. I can't get into that part of the brain, okay? Anyway, she was saying, I'm starting to allow our development team to use AI. However, I don't want them to let AI do all their job for them. I want them to audit the code, fix it, make it scalable, make it maintainable, make it to our standards, yada, yada, yada. They have to refactor it. They have to make it ours. They have to comment it. Okay, all that stuff. So standards. Well, you can only have standards if you have access to the code. So in the world of AI, you have all of these tools who say, no, can't have access to the code. Why? Well, we're designed for beginners. That would scare them away. Can't do that, right? It goes back to the fundamental premise that I talked about earlier. It ain't for you. And it's not for Era 4. So stop using them. Etch gives you access to the code, which means you can prompt AI and anything that needs to be cleaned up, and refactored and standardized to your standards can be done by you, right? You can't do that on any other tool. Any other tool instantly becomes less valuable in the world of AI. So we are cornering that side of things also. Just by default, by the way, it wasn't even the plan, it's just by default because you follow the right premise to begin with. When you follow the right premise, turns out lots of good things happen. When you follow the wrong premise, turns out lots of limitations happen. And that's just how it works. I have the need to create an empty menu item with items inside, but never like those number menu. What's the best approach? Accessibility. I mean, an empty menu item with items inside, but never. I'm not exactly positive what you're asking. So maybe you can ask a different way and then it will make sense in my brain and then I can try to answer it for you. By the way, oh shit, we've got 2 minutes. We're up against the hard break. Okay, we gotta be disciplined though. Disciplined. All right, how would WS Form be integrated into Etch, or would Etch have its own form engine? We could, there's not plans to create its own form engine because these other tools like WS Form, first of all, forms are tremendously expensive. This is one of the things, if you look at Bricks and you say, what did Bricks waste time on? 1,000% they wasted time on their form system. 1,000%. It's so dramatically limited. I don't ever use it. I don't ever touch it. You should be using a properly developed forms tool that does all the things you need it to do. And you should standardize that across all your projects. I don't think page builders have any business reinventing form systems. And if they do, literally you could spend a year on that. Go ask Mark how insanely complex forms are if you're gonna do them right. Now you ask, okay, would you rather have CPTs and custom fields and a media management that actually makes sense where you could tag media natively and you could loop through media? Would you rather have all that, or would you rather have us like do our take of what a form system should look like? You can only have one. You can't have both. So I think people are not gonna choose the form system. They're just gonna live with WS Form because it's already great. So that box is checked. That box is checked. You know what's not checked? CPTs and custom fields and bidirectional relationships and media management and all this other stuff that we need to be able to do. Those boxes are not checked. That question was already answered, Syed. Okay. I think we're good. Could we split pay for Etch by parts now? $100 a month? Yeah, you can. It's definitely going to be like a 6-pay plan, yada, yada, yada. It's all that stuff. All right, I'm back in the chat just for the last 2 minutes, just to say bye to everybody, see what people are saying. Okay, let's see. This is awesome, everyone, but it does show us that any of us that don't know CSS and HTML, though, and we got our homework cut out for ourselves. That's the thing. You don't have to, if you can use Bricks, you can use Etch. We just don't have all the tremendous limitations. Everything is way faster, way better, way everything, okay? Because it's all re-engineered from the ground up with the correct premise. We have to remember, well, I'll talk about that in a separate video because we don't have time. There's a whole rabbit hole of like people look at Bricks now and they go, wow, that's like really powerful. That's really good. How did it become the best builder? Guys, it didn't start out that way. It didn't start out with that premise. There's a very specific timeline of how that happened and very specific people involved with how that happened. And it was all by accident. It was all by accident. That's a whole conversation we should probably have. But if you can use Bricks, you can use Etch. Okay, you don't have to write all your CSS by hand. We have the inputs. Like, go read the article. We solved the problem. We're just not doing it like other people do it. Okay, yeah, I know. My 2 minutes is over. Okay, I will see you guys next week, March 31st. It's going to be very exciting. It's going to be a great milestone. If you have more questions about Etch, they will be answered there 100%. But other than that, I guess actually, is there a WDD live right before that? Or is it right after? Might be right before. So I might see you one more time before that. But either way, I will see you. And I love you guys, and I thank you for the support. And yeah.